It's a commonly known fact in gaming that titles from the past were significantly more difficult than they are today. But is this perception entirely accurate? And if so, why has the difficulty of games dramatically decreased in recent times? There isn't just a simple answer to this question. There's more nuance, including a fundamental shift in how games are conceived, who they're designed for, and what they aim to achieve. To understand this, we have to first examine the comfortable world of the modern gamer. Modern game design promotes a strong emphasis on convenience and accessibility. When a player begins a new AAA title, the experience is often gentle. The initial hour is typically a carefully guided tutorial, a voice or text explaining basic movement, while a glowing line on the ground might show the exact path forward. The map is often a detailed GPS marking every quest, treasure, and point of interest. When something significant happens like combat or platforming, the game may even pause to offer a helpful tip. If the player dies, the consequences are non-existent. You might respawn a few steps away with little to no penalty. The design philosophy is not to punish the player, but to encourage them to continue and to respect their time. AAA games are massive multi-million-dollar investments that need to appeal to the widest possible audience. This requires a difficulty balance that avoids frustration. This focus on accessibility has allowed video games to tell stories with a narrative and emotional depth that was difficult to achieve when a player could be stuck on a single screen for hours. Nowadays, developers want players to see the worlds they've built and experience the stories they've written. That goal is compromised if a large portion of the player base quits at the first major obstacle. This approach has brought more people into gaming, regardless of their skill level. Yet the complexity hasn't disappeared, instead changing form. A retro classic game might test your reflexes with a single pixel-perfect jump. A modern RPG, in comparison, tests strategic thinking through huge skill trees, crafting systems, and dozens of status effects. The challenge is less about pure mechanical skill and more about managing intricate systems. The required skills are different, but one is not necessarily easier than the other. This environment of forgiving checkpoints and clear guidance is the standard for most titles today, made to ensure the player feels like they're in charge and reaches the end credits. On the opposite end, older retro games were not designed to be accommodating and accessible. There's a reason why nowadays we don't say we beat a video game. If you're talking with your friends or inner circle, more than likely you just say, yeah, I've played that before. That's because older games were designed to be conquered. To understand this design philosophy, we can look at some of the most notorious titles from older generations. First up is Battletoads on the NES, a game you can still find discussions on forums to this day. The entire game is challenging, but the turbo tunnel specifically is seared into the memory of an entire generation. The concept sounds simple in theory: ride a speeder bike and dodge walls. The reality ends up being a nightmare that relies on pure memorization. Obstacles appear so quickly that reacting with your reflexes is nearly impossible. You must learn the sequence through painful trial and error. Each failure sends you back, and losing all your lives means starting the entire game over. And this extreme difficulty was, in part, a business decision. Publishers, particularly in the West, were concerned about the video game rental market and made games harder to prevent players from beating them over a weekend and never making a purchase. Another example you can look at is Ninja Gaiden. This action platformer combined two elements to create one of the most rewarding yet frustrating games of all time. First, enemies are placed with precise malice, often appearing at the exact peak of a jump or spawning where the player is about to land. Second, the game features an infamous knockback mechanic. If the player character is hit by anything, he is thrown backwards. Since platforms are often narrow, this frequently results in being knocked into a pit for an instant death. You could be one hit away from defeating a boss, only for a minor enemy to tap you into an abyss, costing you a life. And this list wouldn't be complete without Ghosts and Goblins, one of the hardest games of all time. This game is a perfect example of a quarter muncher, a term originating from arcades where the goal was to make players continuously spend money to continue. You play as Arthur, a hero that can be defeated in just 2 hits. Enemies are relentless and often unpredictable, and while this combination can already be frustrating enough, the ultimate challenge comes after defeating the final boss. The game congratulates you, only to reveal it was a trap devised by Satan, and sends you back to the very beginning to complete the entire game a second time on a harder difficulty to see the true ending. This wasn't designed for your satisfaction, it was designed to maximize profit. And to understand why games like Battletoads, Ninja Gaiden, and Ghosts and Goblins were so unforgiving, you must look back at the time period and the circumstances of their creation. This punishing difficulty wasn't merely a stylistic choice, it was a solution to specific problems. First and foremost was money, as it always is. Early console games inherited their DNA from arcades, where a machine's purpose was to get players to insert more quarters. Games were made to be short, intense, and difficult to master, encouraging repeat customers. When this philosophy moved to home consoles, the motivation shifted to combating the video game rental market. If a player could rent a $50 game, well over $100 in today's money, and finish it in a single afternoon, the incentive to buy it was lost. By making the game brutally difficult, developers artificially extended a game's length and perceived value. Second was technology. Early game cartridges had extremely limited storage space. Developers could not fill a game with dozens of hours of unique content or vast worlds. Realistically, a skilled player can finish Ninja Gaiden in under 20 minutes. The solution to turn that short runtime into weeks of engagement was to make playing the game a monumental task. Punishing enemy placement and unforgiving mechanics stretched the gameplay. Additionally, technical limitations often created unintentional difficulty, such as clunky controls, input lag, and unclear graphics. And lastly, in the 80s, game design was a new art form, and the industry was still establishing the best practices. Games were often created by lone devs or small teams on tight deadlines without the large quality assurance departments common today. Developers who were experts at their own creations may not have recognized how difficult certain sections were for new players. The concept of a smooth, fair difficulty curve was something that would take decades to refine. And this highlights a key distinction: fair versus unfair. Is the knockback in Ninja Gaiden that sends you into a pit an example of cheap design? Compare that to modern difficult games like Cuphead, Celeste, or titles from FromSoft. These games are challenging by intent. Their difficulty is a core part of their identity, and their mechanics are polished so that failure feels like your fault and not the game's. In the retro era, extreme difficulty was often a necessity. Today, it is a deliberate artistic choice. There's also something interesting that rarely gets mentioned in this conversation. Nowadays, in the 21st century, difficulty is a setting, not a mandate. Older games gave you one experience. No sliders, no assist modes, no accessibility toggles. You played the game the way the dev wanted you to play it, or you didn't play at all. Today, many titles let you tune the experience to your exact preference. You can increase enemy aggression, remove the HUD, disable checkpoints, or even turn on permadeath modes. Hell, some players arguably make modern games harder than the retro titles ever were, but now it's voluntary. There's also one more factor worth considering: memory bias. We tend to remember the hardest moments from old games, and not the easy ones. No one remembers the simple tutorials and early levels you breezed through. You remember the impossible stages, the ones that stopped you for weeks. Levels like the Turbo Tunnel from Battletoads, the Water Temple from Ocarina of Time, or the Slippery Climb from Crash Bandicoot. Modern games tend to smooth out their difficulty curves, so your frustration is spread thinner. You struggle less at one single point, but over dozens of hours instead of one brutal wall. The experience feels easier, even if the total challenge isn't necessarily lower. If you really want to test this, try a small experiment. Go back and play one old game you've never beaten. Play for 1 hour. You might be surprised how different it feels. So what does this mean? Does this mean that modern gamers are less skilled nowadays? I think it means more that the required skills have fundamentally changed. The brutal difficulty of the past bred a specific type of player, one skilled in mechanical mastery, pattern recognition, and sheer persistence. Overcoming such challenges provided a profound sense of accomplishment. Psychologists refer to this as effort justification, the idea that we value outcomes more when we work hard for them, and this feeling is the legacy of retro gaming. Modern gaming, for the most part, tests different abilities. It challenges players to manage complex systems, think strategically across worlds, and coordinate with others in multiplayer environments. The difficulty is less about a single moment of execution and more about managing numerous parts over an extended period. The gaming landscape nowadays is incredibly diverse. The rise of indie developers ensures that every niche can be served. Players seeking a punishing, retro-style platformer can find games like Super Meat Boy or Celeste, which are often more fairly designed than their predecessors. Those who prefer a comfortable, story-driven experience have plenty of options in the AAA market. The change isn't that games got easier, but the difficulty evolved from a one-size-fits-all necessity into a deliberate choice for the player and the developer. So, what do you think? Are modern gamers less skilled today than 20-30 years ago? And what was the first game that truly tested your limits? Let me know in the comments. I do read all of them. And if you enjoy the video, maybe you'll consider liking and subscribing. It really helps me create content about things I love. Thanks for watching.